I love VR, however VR games are extremely difficult to develop, which unfortunately leads to a barrier of entry in creating a title, which created an absurd drought in terms of quality titles. In my opinion, there's only so many good VR games. Most games that aren't in my specific selection tend to either be short or small in length and content, or shallow and bare bones in gameplay and immersion, or worse, both. Every VR game has an expectation to justify its unrealistically high price, and to have gameplay comparable to what would happen in real life. Immersion and realism make a VR game a VR game. If it doesn't do a good job doing either, or even has either to begin with, there isn't a good justification on why the game should exist. It should be purchased, and the fortune of all should have been created in the first place. Personally, VR doesn't have nearly enough good games to justify the steep purchase of purchasing a headset. Even the best of the best, being Boneworks and Half-Life Alyx, absolutely have their issues, making them great but not excellent, good enough but not immaculate. Half-Life is simply too bare bones in its gameplay and has very little immersion outside of graphics and audio design. Boneworks is extremely immersive and somewhat deep and engaging in gameplay, but it's an indie game and lacks necessary AAA levels of polish. Now, Into the Radius is certainly not in that fictional realm of an excellent VR game that I can only dream of, but I mean, it's up there. It's one of few, and it absolutely has enough going for it. From the satisfying scavenging, looting and organizing gameplay loop, finance management, hyper-realistic gunplay, and of course, the open world. I'd say it has enough going for it that it absolutely deserves a spotlight in the VR community and my absolute highest praise. Now, I've actually wanted to play this game long before its Quest 2 release, but my computer oddly couldn't run it over 20 FPS with all settings set below. Even though Alyx and Boneworks, both much more graphically impressive, ran at a relatively consistent 50 to 80 FPS. So when the Quest 2 port came out, I immediately snatched up the weaker release. I played for about 6 hours and then stopped, then months later returned and then stopped, and about 2 months from now, I picked it up once more and haven't stopped, but I have taken occasional 2 to 3 week breaks from playing. It isn't that the game struggles to captivate me, it's just that I'm unable to become rusty at it and everything feels extremely natural and second nature to me. And since it has such a sprawling runtime over 30 hours, it's been more fun playing when I feel like it instead of playing nothing but it with the intention of getting it over with. Taking my time with the game actually has been a better experience than playing it with a deadline in mind. I've been savoring the game while it lasts, so while I've wanted to make a review since January, it's taken me quite a bit to get there, but I've finally gotten around to reviewing this indie darling and well, I have a lot to say on it. Starting with its world. Into the Radius's sense of scale is a really big factor into what makes it so incredibly immersive, and right behind Boneworks being the most immersive game I've ever played. The two things that make a VR game great in my eyes is the inclusion of player freedom and a massive sense of scale. Boneworks had nailed both of those perfectly, and Alyx only has scale, but it's also a bit hollow, but Into the Radius has both, with a few caveats that can be easily overlooked. Also, if you couldn't tell by now, there's going to be a lot of comparing to these games, but I'll be doing it in a positive fashion, because if you're going to be up there with the greatest games of an entire genre, comparisons will be made. The way that Into the Radius handles its freedom is how it allows you to pick any route, pick any order of doing the missions you're assigned, use whatever weapons with whatever scopes, and organize, well, everything. The game lets you customize your experience pretty much entirely, and you can even trek into the zone without having a mission selected. You can sleep through the tide, the massive reset nuke that happens every couple hours, or stay awake during it. Fight or flee, explore for extra cash, or make a run for your objective. This game is absolutely stuffed to the brim with these kind of choices, but none of them really affect the main core gameplay. There's surprisingly nothing to overwhelm the player, even though they're given so much at their disposal. It's a lot, sure, but it doesn't ever feel that way. So all these little choices you're given, nearly every second of this literal odyssey, amount to, well, player freedom, the most important factor in creating immersion. giving the player a very natural situation and allowing the player to handle it like they would in real life. You see, if I was getting chased by a couple monsters and didn't feel like wasting over 20 bullets on them, I'd run and hide in the storm drain until they left me alone. Although, stealth is a mechanic that isn't really functional into the Radius, but it's not a big deal. All the choices and decision that your human nature is given absolutely feed into the sense of freedom. But what about the sense of scale? Just like in Boris and Half-Life, you feel like an ant in this game. Like the world is a big and scary place, and that, yeah, while you have a means to defend yourself, you never feel truly safe. Even when you're in a literal safe place on the map, there could be enemies right outside, stalking the only way in and the only way out. Now, large sweeping scenery doesn't completely fill in that itch for scale in the VR title. Half-Life Alyx was all about that, but the sense of scale feels tainted and a bit fractured when you realize how little of it you can actually explore and walk through. It's showing, but not telling. Scale not only has to look big, it has to feel big. The sense of scale has to do more than just trick your eyes. It has to be a palpable, either dazzling or intimidating feeling. And Into the Radius has an excellent sense of that scale, thanks to its world. There's 5 areas in the zone: Pervame, the village, the factory, Kolskaz, and the castle. All quite sprawling in size and interconnected like a Metroidvania, allowing you to create your own routes and make decisions of either going the long and safe way or the fast and dangerous way. Almost everything you see, you can go to. It feels like a big world because it is a big world. Your eyes aren't the only thing telling you that, your gut is. It's a well-crafted world too. Plenty of interesting shelters just to camp at or areas filled with loot and monsters. While a lot may visually look the same, it's filled plentiful with things to do and see, and memorizing the map is a rewarding experience. The story in Into the Radius is honestly very cryptic. Nearly all of it is told through notes like in a survival horror game, which is fitting since, well, it is a survival horror game. Nothing feels exposition dumpy, it's all told through lore, meaning you can dig for context if you so desire, or just ignore it entirely and enjoy the game like I did. I didn't really know what was going on, but I'll say this. Shimmer. The story might not matter to me in the VR game, but you know what does? Sound design. Because in VR, only 2 of your 5 senses are stimulated, hearing and seeing. So audio is half of what makes VR game a VR game, and therefore it has to be focused on. And the sound design in Into the Radius is, what's the right word? Terrifying. In terms of music, there's only really 1 track for each map, and all of it just kind of sounds like ambiance to me, which is completely fine since if it was an actual song with the melody, it gets stale quick, and probably would be best not being in the game at all since it would distract you and fill your ears with noise other than the sounds of your enemy's footsteps. Yes, this game heavily relies on observing surroundings, and the audio design allows that to be done. This game honestly might be impossible if you don't have sound or good quality, or you just have to be the most anxious and paranoid person on the face of the planet, and even then, if it's night, good luck with that. Sound is key to survival. You'll have to stop occasionally to silence your footsteps so you can listen closely if something is following you, and if so, depict what direction it's coming from. In Kolskov, there's a massive tank which roams the map that'll shoot you if it spots you, and it's tense being completely exposed out in the field and hearing that engine get louder as it approaches you from afar, and you have to take shelter as fast as possible and make sure your stamina doesn't completely complete so you can barely get in safe in time and peek your head around where you are hiding from and see it scanning the area as you hold your breath and wait for it to leave and hear that blissful sound of the engine getting quieter and quieter. Oh my god, this game's awesome. Gosh, man, the atmosphere in Into the Radius is nothing short of extraordinary. From the sound design to the ambiance to the dread of nightfall, and the constant feeling that you shouldn't be here and should just be at home playing guitar, clean your arsenal, and then eat pineapple slices with the same exact knife you just stabbed monsters' hearts with. No, I'm not kidding, you can do all of these. This game absolutely embraces the cliches of post-apocalyptic setting, and it works really well. But I guess it's finally time to talk about the gameplay stuff and stop beating around the bush, because, wow. So, Into the Radius's gameplay boils down to this. You prepare for your mission, you embark on your mission, you fight, you loot, you complete your mission objective, and you return to base. And then you unload, you organize, and then you repeat the process. And it just really doesn't get old. First off, the mission structure itself. You're given missions and you can have a bunch selected at a time, and then you trek into the zone and complete them in any order you like. I think the side questy mission-based structure blends really well with this kind of game, but Even though the game is well over 20 hours long, there's only 9 campaign missions, which are good, but the rest of the missions are the same 10 missions that are repeated a bunch of times. But the environments thankfully make up for the lack of structural originality. The choice of order, route, and what missions to simply not select makes such a simple campaign surprisingly engaging. And I personally think that the mission-based structure is handled extremely well. But personally, what happens in between the missions is the most fun part for me, because you get to dump your backpack onto a table, organize every single pack of bullets and every spare mag you find onto your shelves, give your guns a quick scrub, buy more ammo, fill your magazines, reorganize your backpack, and then head back out. This organization is just so much fun to me, and I really don't know why. But customizing my base to my heart's content feels really special to me in a way that I can't really explain. Like I'm making this miserable virtual home feel like my home in the game. It's a really special feeling finally getting to my trailer after being in the zone for days and not having slept for nights, and feeling actually exhausted in real life, and just relaxing for a little bit, enjoying shopping, cleaning, and organizing. It's nice. It's a pleasant way to reward yourself for the hard work you just put yourself through, and if this world was my life, it's something I would absolutely do. It just feels right. While my trailer home is a peaceful yet melancholy pit stop in between intense firefights and long hikes at midnight, the zone itself just sucks. Yet, even the zone itself has some strangely beautiful things about it. The brief feeling of overwhelming comfort in a safe spot, the joy of scavenging and being rewarded for exploring, using the tracker to find these things called artifacts that'll give you extra cash back at home. While most of the zone just sucks, it's just the work. It has some nice aspects to it. Exploring it into the radius feels like a natural mechanic in the game, like you're expected to deviate slightly from your objective to see if you can get some extra money to pay off the splurge on ammo you're gonna make once you get back home. The risk versus reward for a little money to keep yourself financially stable is, again, something that just feels extremely natural and optional, even though it's actually mandatory to keep your financial stability afloat. Looting just is a great mechanic, and it blends really well with the gameplay. But it's a first-person shooter, right? You know what that means. There's guns, there's bullets, there's bloodshed. The gun's gotta be good, right? Is it good? Yes. But, look, the guns are just something that I really want to talk about, and I've held it off for the very end. Just wow, okay? First off, I'm gonna make another comparison to Boneworks. Okay, I know! Boneworks, the guns are kicky. The recoil is visceral. Aiming is very natural and there's no reason to look down sights. You just kind of know deep down where your bullets are going to go. Into the radius, guns feel a bit weak, recoil feels muted, then you have to aim down sights to hit your target since there's a lot of reliance on exploiting enemy weak points. However, I like Into the Radius of the guns more. Wait, hold on, wait. Okay, look, it's because of the ammo, okay? In Boneworks, when you run out of ammo, big whoop, you just pull out a mag from your nearly endless stash that's already filled, slap the empty mag out of the stratosphere, and insert that bad boy and get shooting again. No weapon deterioration, you don't even have to pull the slide. Boneworks is all about non-stop John Wick action. And it nails it. It's like an action movie. It's fantastic and a joy to play. But sometimes I've wanted to have a down-to-earth, realistic, slow burn VR shooter. And Into the Radius is the game of my dreams. You want fast-paced action? Boneworks. You want a slow, terrifying, and unbelievably immersive shooter to sink your teeth into and savor? Into the Radius. Both are, in my opinion, tied for being the most immersive VR game. But one is fast-paced and one is painfully slow. And it comes down to the ammo and the movement. First, just the movement, okay? While Boneworks is bouncy and fast and can climb things like a monkey and leap off rooftops, Into the Radius is slow. There's no jump button, climbing is fast but has no tactile feedback, and you feel like you're super glued to the ground. However, the reason why Into the Radius's guns are more in my favor, and why the game is an extremely slow-paced shooter in comparison to Boneworks, well, it comes down to one simple mechanic. Into the Radius's approach on ammunition. In Boneworks, you pull out a mag, replace the old one, and resume shooting like it never happened. It's not a paced killer in the slightest, because if you're good, it can take less than a second to do the action. Into the Radius, it's quite a different story. You have to buy the magazine, buy the ammo for the magazine, hold the ammo box up to the magazine, wait to fully fill, then put it in a pouch on your waist, and then you can put it in your gun and pull the slide, and then turn off safety. But that's not all. Once you've run out, you can't store your mag away. You need that mag, so you have to eject it, grab it, and put it in an empty pouch, and then grab a new one. So you'll need at least 3 additional magazines, not including the one that's already in your gun. And if you're in a fight, and you run through all 4 mags, well, now you have to take cover and pull out your backpack and start filling them up mid-fight, while there's 4 enemies over there running to your exact location, guns blazing. And not only that, but your individual magazines, every single one, deteriorates, meaning that using one mag too many times and not rotating them will cause your gun to jam a considerable amount, so you'll have to clean them as well. This is a lot to keep track of. but while it might just sound like an annoyance to you, when you're in the middle of a massive firefight and you have to run and duck and take cover and get your bag out and fill a mag while time is ticking, and every single bullet you shoot is a few dollars down the drain, it feels so tense. The combat isn't normally that challenging, but it is extremely engaging when you wince from missing and realizing you're one bullet short. And if you run out of ammo in the zone, you're screwed. The simple resource management is engaging enough on its own, but when it's such a massive and sprawling concept to constantly consider and is blended so well with the core gameplay, it's undeniably wonderful. It's not for everyone. Not everyone will like the stress of not being able to miss any shots and the chore of cleaning your guns and organizing, but to me, that's what sells Into the Radius. It's a simple game on premise. There's not a lot of variety in its missions, its enemies, its world isn't even that incredibly engaging a trek, but the gameplay itself is extremely solid and carefully designed. There's really just no game like Into the Radius, and at least no game at this absurd level of quality and quantity. From the resource management, to the looting and organizing of said loot, terrifying isolated walks alone at night, the frantic adrenaline rush when you're being shot at from afar and barely just in time to get in a safe spot, cinematic firefights of being surrounded with what feels like endless enemies, to the painstakingly excellent atmosphere and world building. Into the Radius is a rich, immersive experience that I loved just about every second of, and if you have VR, I highly advise you to pick it up. I think Boneworks is the only game that surpasses it, but it's easily one of, if not the second best VR game of all time.